Hi, my name is Brett Jenks. I'm the President and CEO of Rare, and I want to share with you a bright spot brought to me by Peter Knights from Wildaid, where he describes very briefly technology that they're using to help communities in the Galapagos enforce their fishing guidelines. This is really important to reduce overfishing by local fishermen, and I think a promising potential bright spot that could be replicated elsewhere. So check it out.
This is a presentation about the work we've been doing in the Galapagos Islands since 1998, and specifically the Galapagos Marine Reserve, which at the time was one of the largest marine reserves in the world. And the reason Galapagos is so unique, if you look at this map of global temperatures, you can see there's this band of warm water that goes around the equator, and there's this arrow of cold water going straight down the middle here, happens to go right through the Galapagos Islands. So Galapagos has this mix of tropical water with very cold, nutrient-rich water from the Humboldt Current, and this means that it has very unique and very abundant marine wildlife. So this is the Marine Reserve. It's 40 nautical miles all around the archipelago, set up in 1998. Some of the things that are unique there are the world's only marine lizard, the marine iguana, the world's only tropical penguin, the Galapagos penguin, huge shoals of rays and sharks that come in. It's a whaling breeding ground which brought the original whalers and pirates to these islands, whale sharks, and a whole host of very abundant marine life, and of course the birds which then live off it. Of course that brings predators of another kind, human beings, and this is one incident a few years ago where sharks are being killed for their fins, and in this case actually an endangered fur seal was being used as bait to catch these sharks just to take the fins. And the other product, the main product that's come from Galapagos is the sea cucumbers, and the appeal of the sea cucumbers and shark fins is they're very high value products. They can be sun-dried, so they don't need to be refrigerated, and they can be shipped to Asia. So this kind of caused a fishing boom in Galapagos. Now the sea cucumbers have been absolutely decimated. The numbers have gone down tremendously, and we still have no idea what the environmental impact of that is. What we call full circle marine enforcement basically looks at this law enforcement chain, and like any chain, it's only as strong as the weakest link. And what tends to happen in a lot of places is one or two of these pieces of the chain will be in place, and then the system breaks down at some point or the other. Either they're not detecting the people, or they're not then arresting them, or the prosecutions are failing, or when they are prosecuted, maybe the penalties are too low. So to have really good long-term enforcement, you need to address all those pieces in the chain, and that's what we've been trying to do in Galapagos over the years. So when we first came into Galapagos, this area, which is the size of New York State, had one patrol vessel, and that patrol vessel was broken, and so it wasn't seaworthy. So first thing we did was to help the park get that back out there patrolling and in the water. More beyond that now, where we're at with the boats is rather than just repairing boats when they break down, we're introducing a proper maintenance system. So then we looked at the islands and decided how we're going to protect these, and this is the days before satellite vessel monitoring, but we built a base out in the west of the island so that this side of the archipelago could be protected, a permanent presence there from the park. There are no permanent habitations other than these places on the island, so that's it gives us a place in the west. And then we've got a barge which is now moored up in the north, right up in the north of the islands in Darwin and Wolf. That has radar and a boat on it, which means we can patrol these northern areas as well. And then basically with the Park Service and various donors, we've built up a whole flotilla of different boats that are capable of patrolling the area. And then AID a few years ago bought a float plane, which means suddenly New York State is actually patrollable, as opposed to being something it takes 2 days to get from one end to the other. It's down to a matter of hours. And so all these things working together can help to protect the reserve. So this, I think, is a very exciting development. Satellite vessel monitoring systems. These are basically, it's like air traffic control that you'd use in an airport. Each of the boats over 20 tons is required by maritime law now to carry one of these transponders. And this transponder tells us which boat is where, the speed it's going, and the location. What we used to have in the Galapagos is these fishing boats, which you can see now are all queued up around the outside of the reserve, which is great. It means the reserve is being enforced. But if they used to come in, or they go across and they claim what's called safe passage through the islands, and they would just happen to slow down and put their lines in the water on the way through, or their nets in the water. Now with this system, that can be detected. If they slow down to put their nets or lines in, it sets off an alarm. And this system is so automated that actually the operator can be sat in the bar having a beer, and his cell phone will text him telling boat X has stopped at this time. he can immediately dispatch a fast speedboat, so something which can go out very quickly directly to where they are and catch them red-handed. And since May 2009, which is coming up to a year ago, there's been 34 boats seized by this. And not only do you catch the boats, but you also have the direct evidence of where they were at what time, which is very persuasive for judges in court process. So this is, I think, going to be a real boon for large marine protected areas, because essentially you can survey a very large area with minimal running costs. And this is just a graph which shows you how, since we've been working, how the detection rates have gone up from virtually nothing up here. Now, we would expect now in the next couple of years this to go down as more and more people are not only being caught, but they're being successfully prosecuted and gone through the system. So the other thing we look at trying to do people, systems and equipment. We've talked about the equipment and about the systems and things like the legal systems and also the maintenance systems. You need the people to implement this, and the reality is most marine reserves in the world, the people who are rangers are often biologists. That's their training, and of course they find themselves in what essentially is a law enforcement situation, and sometimes they'll have the assistance of police or Navy or other people, but basically very often those people are not trained in actual law enforcement. So what you find is they will not know how to process evidence properly. They'll not know how to interview witnesses and people like that, and basically gather a court case together. So we've trained the rangers in a number of cases, ongoing training programs, to basically be able to conduct themselves with modern law enforcement techniques. The other people we need to work with, of course, is local communities, and that's something we've done in Galapagos with other NGOs, basically trying to encourage alternatives to illegal fishing. We've found most success working with women's groups that are fishermen's wives, who tend to have a much longer outlook than some of the fishermen in Galapagos. We found the fishermen's wives very much wanting a longer term, more steady income than the boom and bust that was the shark fin and sea cucumber industries, where people would make very, very large amounts of money for a couple of months of the year and then have nothing for the rest of the year. As the fisheries have declined, it's been easier to persuade people into more sustainable long-term alternatives. Communication is also part of law enforcement, and you need to communicate what the laws are, what the penalties are, etc. But I think you also, as you know so well at Rare, you need to get the community and the nation together behind you. So we've engaged in public awareness campaigns using advertising agencies to produce pretty high quality materials. This was a campaign called Tu Marca Natural, your natural heritage, and it involved babies and different Ecuadorians from different ethnic backgrounds, all with a common birthmark of the Galapagos Islands. So we're finishing off the project now in Galapagos. We are now looking at a lower tech version of a tracking system for the smaller boats, something called AIS, Automatic Identification System, and this is a system which works on radio and radar as opposed to satellite, and it's more localized, so it's very suitable for coastal use and also for use in small boats such as pangas. I mean, basically the satellite vessel monitoring system has an ongoing monthly cost of, I think it's $180 to $100 a month, which is not very much for a large boat, but for a panga would be prohibitively expensive. This system essentially has no ongoing costs. You have to install radar and you have to install the units, but basically it's pretty low tech and pretty easy to be used on small fishing boats. And we're doing now a training course, which will be an ongoing training course by the park for the park going forward. Previously, we brought in people such as Fish and Wildlife Service to do that. Now we're designing a training course that can be done year in, year out by the park rangers, so training the trainers. And part of the other project we're doing there is to not only manage the fishing boats, but also the tourism boats as well. There's 85 large vessels now operating in Galapagos, and just making sure something which has emerged recently is, I think I'm coining a new term here, but pirate tourism, where people are operating tourism illegally in the Galapagos, not just fishing. And so this system would enable the park to do that. And then beyond this, we're working in the broader corridor, the Eastern Tropical Pacific Corridor. Galapagos is one of the marine reserves. Cocos from Costa Rica, Malpelo and Gorgona from Colombia, and Coiba in Panama. These are all reserves within a corridor, and the idea would be to make all of these reserves with similar protection levels to Galapagos. And then also to work within the corridor to have certain types of fishing gear banned and things like that to enable the migrating species such as leatherback turtles and hammerhead sharks, which go between these places, to protect them in between as well.